Hey guys, Mike here, and today I'm bringing you another segment on Dragon Ball Z. The topic of this video will be one that I've been wondering about for a while now, and that is, what if a Cell Jr. survived? Now, as we all know, the Cell Jr.'s were spawned by Cell during his fight against Gohan in order to attack his friends in an effort to bring out his hidden powers. Due to their surprising strength, they gave all the Z fighters a great fight, beating most of them into submission, including a weakened Goku. Eventually, Gohan did go Super Saiyan 2 and destroyed all of them with ease. But what if one of them survived the onslaught by Gohan? How would this impact the story after the Cell games, including the fights to come? Well, let's take a detailed look at this and find out. Now let's assume for the sake of argument that the Cell Jr. didn't immediately try and go back after the Z fighters, considering the fact that Gohan could easily kill it, as it killed the rest of its brothers. The most similar path that I could see this following would be that of Piccolo Jr. in Dragon Ball. Before the death of King Piccolo at the hands of Goku, he spit out an egg who became his final son and reincarnation in Piccolo Jr. Piccolo Jr. existed for the sole purpose of getting revenge on Goku, and as a result he trained constantly for that purpose. In as little as 3 years of training, Piccolo matured to the same age as Goku, and became his essential equal in power. Considering how fast Cell matured from his larval state, as well as the fact that he possesses Piccolo's genes, it's highly possible that the Cell Jr. can also age at this rapid rate. And imagine if the Cell Jr., being aware of how powerful Gohan and the rest of the Z fighters were, as well as the fact that they would train to get even stronger, trained itself. Not only is it already starting off with a very high level of power that it was born with, but it also possesses Namekian and Saiyan genes, two races known for having massive gains in power through training. Just imagine the gains that a Cell Jr. can make being made up of the genes of the most powerful beings in the universe, and having a greater starting strength than its father did when it was created. It's very likely that in a matter of years, not only would it surpass its father, but also Super Saiyan 2 Teen Gohan. After all, it would know firsthand just how powerful Gohan was when it fought him, so it would have a realistic goal to be able to surpass. Although on top of this, possessing the genes of Vegeta and Goku, it probably wouldn't even stop there, but continue to push its power till its absolute limit. Many people have often wondered what would happen if we had a Cell that trained. Well, in this case, that's exactly what it appears to be. So what would happen if a character with the potential to be this strong was inserted into the Dragon Ball Z timeline? Well, I happen to think that it would bring on drastic changes. For this, there's two different scenarios that I can picture where the Cell Jr. would actually insert himself into the picture. The first scenario would take place in between the gap between the Cell games and the beginning of the Buu saga. There's no reason to suspect that the Cell Jr. would wait the full 7 years to show up at a period of time either during or after the Buu saga, simply because the story makes the skip itself. So if we assume the same number of years that it took Piccolo to mature is the same amount that it would take for Cell Jr. to mature, say 3 or 4 years, and he showed up at that point, what exactly would happen? Well, there's an argument to be made that this is actually the worst case scenario. The reason I say this is because Goku is no longer around and Gohan is no longer training. The only character that we actually know was training in this period of time was Vegeta. However, the Cell Jr. was actually on the same level as Vegeta, if not a little bit stronger, when they actually fought during the Cell games. And considering that it probably took around 7 years for Vegeta to actually achieve Super Saiyan 2 and to surpass Gohan, and the Cell Jr. probably has a much greater potential than Vegeta considering that it not only has Saiyan genes, but the Namekian genes, it's very likely that the Cell Jr. would also surpass him. So we have a Cell Jr. who's trained for the past 4 years, walking into the spot in the timeline, where it's very likely that no one is on its level, considering that the strongest character at the time, Gohan, has not been training and has been getting weaker for the past 4 years. And considering that Goku is also dead during this period of time, he also won't be around to help fight the Cell Jr. So in this case, we're presented with what is most likely a no-win scenario for Gohan and the Z fighters. And the only way I could see them surviving would be if Goku used his one-day visit to come back and help fight him. And even then, there's a number of things that we don't know, such as if Goku at this point in time has already mastered the Super Saiyan 2 and 3 transformation, and also if Goku has learned the fusion technique yet. Considering how Goku in his Super Saiyan 2 form wasn't that much more powerful than Gohan when he fought Cell, it's very unlikely that he'd already mastered the Super Saiyan 3 transformation by this point in time. However, it is possible that Goku learned the fusion technique at this point in time, which could help them to become stronger than Cell Jr. and ultimately defeat him. Of course, all this assumes that the Cell Jr. would actually allow them to buy time in order to learn this technique or for Goku to return. However, considering that a Cell Jr. is an asexual reproduction, essential clone of Cell, and assuming that they have the same mental capabilities, it is entirely possible that this would happen, considering the fact that with Vegeta's genes, Cell is very eager to fight somebody with a greater power than his own, as we saw in the fight against Gohan. So perhaps upon defeating the Z Fighters and learning about Goku's fusion technique, the Cell Jr. would allow them time to learn it just so it can combat them. Going by just how powerful Gotenks became, if this were to transpire, it's very likely that they would be able to attain the power necessary to defeat the Cell Jr. And considering that Goku and Gohan had both fought Cell in the past, it's very unlikely that they would allow him to get in another situation where he could possibly blow up the Earth and take it with him. So assuming that the Cell Jr. would allow all of these things to transpire, in this scenario they would actually be able to overcome him. The only other scenario in which I could see this taking place would have to be during the Buu saga, and here this scenario becomes a little bit more up in the air. The reason I believe that this would have to take place now is due to a number of factors. The first factor would have to be the return of Goku. As Gohan quit training and with Vegeta always behind him in the past, Goku returning makes him the de facto most powerful fighter in the world. On top of this, Goku's death came at the hands of Cell, Cell Jr.'s father, so the combination of these different factors could very possibly force the Cell Jr.'s hand into going ahead with his plot for revenge. But even in this case, there's a possibility that the Cell Jr. may not know that Goku has returned to the Earth. So the next factor would have to be the tournament. A gathering of the most powerful fighters in the universe would certainly have to draw the attention of the Cell Jr., just as it did the Supreme Kai. And even if all of the Z Fighters were able to successfully suppress their power to the point where the Cell Jr. could not sense them, it is still likely that he would keep tabs on the tournament just in case they showed up, and it would certainly be tipped off immediately once they start fighting, especially in the fight between Goku and Vegeta. The last and perhaps biggest factor out of all of them would have to be Buu himself. The resurrection and release of Majin Buu was a big event, and his energy was so large that it could be felt all the way around the world, and even made Goku and Vegeta give pause during their fight in Super Saiyan 2. So even if the Cell Jr. was unable to sense everything that happened up until that point, it's a certainty that he would have been able to feel Buu when he was released. And since we've already established that with Vegeta's cells, the Cell Jr. would probably be very interested in fighting someone with a power either on its own level or even higher, it's very likely that Majin Buu's resurrection and release would be the final straw that would draw him out of hiding. Everything that happens after this point is determined by how much stronger the Cell Jr. has gotten in its 7 years of training. As far as I'm concerned, if the Cell Jr. can surpass Super Perfect Cell in 3 to 4 years of training, it can probably at least double that strength within 3 to 4 more. This would place the Cell Jr. either on or above Buu's level, because if we remember, the stolen energy from Gohan at the tournament was enough to fill up Buu's power level to nearly half capacity. This would probably place Buu's power at 2 times Super Saiyan 2 Teen Gohans from the Cell games. Deciding the winner in a fight between two opponents who are of the same power is very tricky, but in the end I would have to give it to Cell just because of the sheer number of his different techniques. Although it's likely that Buu's regeneration is even better than Cell's, Cell just knows so many different techniques which he gained from all of the different Z fighters that it's very likely that he would come out victorious in the end. And let's also not forget that the Cell Jr. being a copy of Cell would know all of his techniques, including the Spirit Bomb, which is what killed Buu in the original timeline. And unlike Vegeta, if the Cell Jr. blows himself up to try and kill Buu, he'll actually regenerate and come back even stronger. At this point, if Buu has been killed and Cell Jr. still remains, it's likely he'll replace Buu as the primary antagonist. However, in this case, unlike the previous scenario, Goku is on Earth and is a Super Saiyan 3. And as we know, a Super Saiyan 3 is 4 times as strong as a Super Saiyan 2, which would make Goku at least twice as strong as the Cell Jr. So unless Cell Jr. got 8 times stronger in his 7 years of training, it's probable to say that if Goku goes full force, he would overcome and defeat him. But if Goku decides not to do this just as he did with Buu, it's still likely that everything else that came into play in the last scenario would happen here as well. Goku would probably take advantage of Cell's overconfidence and willingness to fight a stronger opponent, and use that to give Goten and Trunks the time in order to teach them the fusion technique. And considering that Cell cannot transform into any more powerful states such as Buu did with Super Buu or absorbing the other other Z fighters, this would give him no answer to the fusion technique, which would likely result in his inevitable defeat. So in the end, in this scenario, this would actually make Cell Jr. an even lesser threat than Buu was. As a result, the rest of the Z fighters would likely not be killed and the Earth would probably not be destroyed. So there you have it. I believe I answered the question of what would happen if a Cell Jr. survived. In the end, I believe that his own overconfidence and hubris would probably lead to his inevitable downfall, just as it did his own father. Well, my name is Mike, and this has been another segment on Dragon Ball Z. Let me know your own thoughts in the comments section, and what topics you would like me to talk about in the future. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And as I always say, stick around, because there's a lot more to come in the future. And you better subscribe!